Please be seated. So I've done that 3 times today, and it doesn't get old. It doesn't get old. Well, yeah, probably for you. So did you hear that story? The Abe story? I like to call him Abe. We're on a first-name basis, he and I. That story has been just stuck with me all week long. Just stuck. And we tried to do Bible studies. All of us were trying to do Bible studies with it, and there's so much in it. It took 45 minutes to do all the background stuff to get to what we could talk about. And I thought, that's a bit long. So I was thinking, how do you get it? How do you bring this down? And the more I thought about it, the more that the thing that kept popping up was me going to seminary. I just kept remembering seminary, and I didn't want to go there. But it just, every time. So seminary, to put it mildly, was not what I expected. I was raised in the Episcopal Church, father a priest, church every Sunday, did the whole deal. And I thought I knew. I didn't know. And I went to seminary, and it was extremely formal, very, very academic. And the academics were kind of lecture style. And did I say it was formal? So it was really the very opposite of the way I learn best. I learn best in a kind of a less formal atmosphere where there can be a lot of interaction, all right? And that didn't seem to be there. So, and that was just one part of it. And the next part that was even probably more hard than that was we're getting all this information, all this stuff about the Bible, about the church, and I was thinking, what am I going to do with this? Theology? Where do you use this? Okay, and what the seminary said was, well, part of where you're going to use it is in church. And so for 2 years of the 3 years you're there, you work in a church. All right, and I had high hopes for this, very high hopes. And in the Virginia area where I went to seminary, Northern Virginia, Alexandria, the whole Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area had a ton of Episcopal churches. I mean, all different types. Everything from a place where you walk in the door and you can smell the incense because it had seeped into the walls. It was that strong. It was very appealing to me in many ways because I'd never seen that before. And then on the other end of the spectrum was, you familiar with morning prayer at all? If you are, well, that was the main service that they did. And only did communion, Eucharist, what we do every Sunday, they only did it once a month, if that. And then everything in between that. Everything in between that. And so what you had to do was visit all these churches and then find one that you could sign a deal with and work with while you were in this 2 of the years of your seminary. So I narrowed it down to 2 places. One was one of those high church, smell incense everywhere places because I was just so intrigued by it. And I interviewed with that guy, and everything was just so fussy. And everything was just so formal that I was like, I got enough of that. All right? And I found this other place, St. Francis in Great Falls, Virginia. And it was this wooden church, beautiful wooden church. And the thing I loved the most about it, right out back, behind the altar, was a big window, a big just glass window. And it looked on to the woods. And animals would come up. The whole St. Francis deal was right there. And so I was like, this is it. This is the place. And the guy who was the rector he didn't use notes. So he kind of walked around like we're doing right now. And I'd never seen that. So I was intrigued by that. And I thought, yeah, this is the place. So we have an interview, and you have to go through the interview, and they have to accept you, and you have to accept them, and you sign a deal. So the interview went pretty well. It's going along. And then right toward the end, he goes, you are a really good guy, but you have to wear socks. And I was like, why? I mean, where I came from, you got dressed up, put on loafers, no socks. Nobody wore socks, ever. I mean, I didn't even own a pair of dress socks. And I was like, oh no, even this place. Not what I expected at all. All right, well, today, Abe is dealing with the same thing I was dealing with. Abe is dealing with life being not what he expected. Right? If you just a brief little thing about his story, he gets this powerful religious experience with God, and it sends him on his way, and he leaves his home, he leaves everything behind except for the people who are closest to him, moves to the place where he's supposed to go. He's there, he has ups and downs, joys and pains, but nothing about the promise has happened yet. He doesn't have a child yet. It's not what he's expecting. It hasn't happened the way God said it was going to happen, or the way he interpreted God saying it's going to happen. All right? And it's very discouraging. You could hear it in the story today, right? He's discouraged. He's discouraged. This isn't happening. I'm going to have to give my stuff to somebody who's not even my own kid. All right? And it goes on and on and on. And then it goes on to say how it is that he sticks with his life so that he doesn't give up on the promise that God has promised him. Right? That's what that whole vision is about. He has this vision. And in the vision, what he sees, what he has is a deep experiential relationship with God that moves him forward in life. And he recognizes that in the process of his living, even when it doesn't go the way he expects it to go, God is there. God is there with him. God is in the process of his life. And that enables him to just stick with it. And the truth of the matter is, God is in the process of our lives too. God is in the process, and God is at work, working through the process of our lives. Whether we know it or not. Whether we see it or not. Okay, so here's how it played out in my life. So I bought socks. All right. Invested in a pair of dress socks. And just one. And wore those and got the position. So I got to work there. And basically what I did was I worked with youth. I was a young guy, 24, 25, something like that. I worked with youth. I did visits in people's homes just to chat and get to know people. And preached like once a month on Sundays. And that was a pretty good amount. The other thing I did was each week, the rector there, he and I would meet and we would just chat. We would talk about life. We would talk about we would talk about just everything. Well, one time we met, and he said to me, I want you to do the adult forum for Advent. You know what the adult forum is? It's all adults. That's the name. So you teach there's the kids stuff, and then there's the adult stuff, right? And I was always doing the kids stuff, but he wanted me to do the adult stuff. And part of me was like, oh, man. But then another part of me was like, finally. All this information that I'm getting from seminary, and here's the people who I will dump it on. They want to know this. I know they want to know this. I'm certain they want to know this. All this stuff about Advent. I mean, that's what I was told. Everybody wants to know this. So I had in my mind, I had this expectation of I'd go there and I'd give them all this great information about Advent, all the history of it, all this stuff, and people would stand up and clap. It was so well done. And you know what? It did not go as I expected. As a matter of fact, I think I brought it to a new level of boredom. From then on out at St. Francis Church, boredom was judged by that class. That I set the bar pretty low or high, however you want to look at it. Yeah. And so I felt terrible. I mean, I felt horrible. Once again, I had these images of people just leaving the church, never coming back again. Like, oh my God, I'd rather watch paint dry than sit in that, right? So I just felt terrible. And I did not want to, I had come to really appreciate the meetings with the rector, but I didn't want to meet with him now because I just thought, this guy, he's going to kill me. And so, but after a few days, I had to do it. It's part of the deal. And we met. And we always, before we started our time together, we always had a few minutes of silence. So we would just sit there together in silence. And then he would kind of break the silence with prayer. So he said the prayer, and I was like dreading it. You ever be in silence when you're dreading what's coming? It's like, oh man, this is the most uncomfortable silence I've ever been in. And then he says the prayer, and then he goes, so, how do you think your class went? And I just went, blah. I couldn't get it out fast enough. How bad I felt, how bad I thought it was, how terrible I thought I did, what a failure I was, and on and on and on. And he listened. He just let me go. He just let me go. And then I think I took a breath, and he got real quiet. And then he said, let me tell you about some of the failures I've had. And he did that. He told me about the times where he didn't do what he hoped he could do in church. And I thought, as he was talking, man, here is a real human being. Because I don't know if you know this, but sometimes clergy can put on an air. Did you know that? I mean, to cut us some slack, it's because I think sometimes we think that's what you expect. So a lot of the clergy I'm around, have a big image. But not him. This was a real human being. He wasn't trying to play a part. He wasn't playing a role with me. And his honesty and his openness cracked me open. Cracked me wide open. And it became a holy, sacred moment. And from then on, our conversations each week got deeper and deeper and deeper. And it was through that relationship that I was able to move forward in seminary and in the church. You see, as I look back on my life, what I see right there was God was in our conversations. God was there the whole time. Week in, week out, I encountered the presence of God through my relationship with Him. Now, it's not as mysterious as a big vision, but just as profound. And what He helped me to see is that God is present with us in our relationships. In the people we love and the people we struggle with. In all of them, God is there. And it's through those relationships that we can experience the fullness of God and the fullness of life. Kind of like Abe. Amen.